Hey there, yeah, the Trump administration will be beefing up the response here to the ICE issue in Chicago.
Several immigrant advocacy groups in Chicago are suing the Trump administration and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The president has been critical of Chicago's status as a sanctuary city. The groups filing this lawsuit say the planned raids are retaliatory in nature.
It looked like a SWAT raid, but it wasn't. People were mid-bite, sipping smoothies, wrangling kids in the food court when ICE agents stormed a mall in downtown Chicago. No warning, no announcements. Over 100 armed federal officers swarmed tables, sealing exits, demanding IDs.
The agents fired sound grenades, flashbang grenades at the crowd.
By the time it ended, more than 2,400 undocumented individuals were in custody. It was one of the largest single-site immigration sweeps in U.S. history, and it happened in broad daylight, inside a mall. But this wasn't random. It was a planned federal blitz that had been months in the making. And now, with thousands detained, families shattered, and mall businesses reeling, one question echoes through Chicago. What happens when your sanctuary city stops being a sanctuary? Let's break it down. Lunchtime at a Chicago downtown mall turned into a full-blown panic zone.
According to the supermarket's lawyers, a few employees were arrested. One attorney says ICE agents seized some of the employees' cell phones, computers, and records.
1 second, shoppers were grabbing slices and smoothies. Next, dozens of ICE agents stormed the food court. People froze mid-bite. A few ran. Most just stood there, confused, stunned, and unsure of what was going on. Agents moved quickly, checking IDs on the spot and cornering exits. According to ICE's official statement, the raid was part of a planned multi-state operation. Their focus, arresting individuals with final deportation orders or pending criminal charges. What made this one so chaotic was the scale. Reports across social media and local forums say over 2,000 people were stopped or questioned in just a couple of hours. Though ICE hasn't publicly confirmed the total number, their broader enforcement actions have matched these kinds of numbers before, but this one hit different. It wasn't quiet or hidden. It was loud, fast, and right in front of families, employees, and kids. While no detailed statements were released within hours, the city's history with ICE enforcement has always stirred controversy. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has been vocal about his criticism of the ICE raids.
We saw armed, masked men walk down our streets in broad daylight, and they kidnapped mothers and fathers. You have the President of the United States of America setting human traps. It is sickening and unconscionable.
What's also clear is that this isn't over. ICE confirmed this was just one part of a larger regional operation. Other major cities are expected to be included in the same wave of enforcement, and if the chaos witnessed at the mall is any clue, the next round may hit even harder. In just under 3 hours, downtown Chicago became the center of one of the largest immigration raids in U.S. history. By the time the chaos settled, more than 2,400 undocumented individuals had been detained. According to ICE's public statement, this operation now ranks as the biggest single-site enforcement since the 2019 Mississippi poultry plant sweep, which involved around 680 arrests across 7 sites.
Breaking news as ICE agents today carried out the largest statewide sweep of workplaces for undocumented immigrants in U.S. history. About 680 migrants were rounded up at 7 food processing plants in 6 cities in Mississippi.
What makes this Chicago raid stand out is its location. Not a factory, not a warehouse, but a busy public mall. But here's where things get even more intense. Among those arrested weren't just visitors or loiterers. ICE confirmed that a large portion were employees, mall kiosk vendors, janitorial staff, fast food line cooks, even backroom stalkers. Many had been working there for months, some even years, blending in so seamlessly with the mall's everyday hum that no one suspected a thing.
More than a dozen day laborers and street vendors were detained by federal agents. It all started with an early morning raid at this Home Depot in Westlake. It was called Operation Trojan Horse. The raids sparking protests and tonight a vigil for those detained.
What tipped ICE off? A leaked DHS memo revealed that surveillance on the mall had been underway for over 6 months. Facial recognition, payroll audits, and undercover visits were all part of the operation. This wasn't random, it was precision planned. This wasn't just an enforcement action, it was a message, and the timing, right after new city council measures attempted to reaffirm Chicago's sanctuary city status, almost daring federal agencies to respond. And respond they did.
We saw them brutalize protesters and shove crying grandmothers into the back of unmarked vans.
The mayor said he had a lot of concerns about the ICE operation that sent texts to people facing deportation, asking them to come in for a status check. We've blurred the faces of those detained as we don't know whether they face any charges.
Multiple former employees have come forward claiming that mall management had been tipped off days earlier about a federal presence coming. Unfortunately, no one warned the cleaning staff or the dozens of food court workers who were the clear focus of the operation. ICE agents reportedly entered through utility doors and freight entrances, bypassing public areas to reach back corridors and kitchens first. That precise targeting has now drawn backlash from immigrant rights organizations who accuse the agency of profiling based on race and class. Most of those detained, according to local legal aid groups, were Latino and Southeast Asian food workers, many with ongoing visa or asylum cases.
The dramatic videos show federal agents detaining day laborers in Home Depot parking lots and chasing farm workers across fields.
What you're doing is kidnapping!
This street vendor clung to a tree as agents tried to bring her into custody.
The raid happened in broad daylight, inside a luxury mall known for its family-friendly image and high-end retailers. And that's what's fueling outrage. Why were the most vulnerable workers targeted? And why were the ones in charge conveniently left out of the loop? The fallout has already begun. Tenant associations are demanding answers. The ACLU is investigating potential civil rights violations, and immigrant-led protests are planned for this weekend right outside that very mall.
I want President Trump to know that not all these undocumented people are bad. Most of them are here, hardworking people.
What started as a sudden ICE sweep through the Chicago Mall's food court quickly spiraled into something much bigger and much more chaotic. By nightfall, over 1,000 people had reportedly been transferred out of Cook County, according to multiple local advocacy groups and eyewitness accounts. The operation, described by some as coordinated but cold, saw buses quietly moving detainees to undisclosed holding centers, many hours outside the city limits. Some were driven as far as southern Indiana and central Illinois. But the worst part? Families were completely left in the dark. Outside Chicago's ICE field office on South Dearborn Street, dozens of people, mostly spouses and children, camped out in the summer heat, hoping for answers. Phones rang endlessly. Some held handwritten signs with names, others carried photos. But ICE reportedly released no public statement about the identities or locations of those detained in the sweep, at least not in the first 24 hours.
There is more love than hate. There is more hope than fear. Say that with me. There is more love than hate.
Advocates from the National Immigrant Justice Center and other local groups confirmed to CBS News Chicago that many families waited overnight, sleeping on sidewalks, terrified and confused about where their loved ones had been taken. And the silence from federal agencies only deepened the chaos. What made this food court sweep different and darker from other previous ICE raids in the area was the scale and lack of warning. Detainees weren't just adults with prior notices. Young children, teens, and elderly individuals were also escorted out, many in complete shock. And for the families, they waited and waited and waited. But that wasn't the end of it. Just hours after ICE agents swarmed the Chicago downtown mall in a surprise raid, the legal aftershocks hit like a second wave. The ACLU didn't waste a minute. By that evening, they had filed an emergency injunction in federal court challenging the legality of the mass arrests.
Several immigrant advocacy groups in Chicago are suing the Trump administration and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The president has been critical of Chicago's status as a sanctuary city. The groups filing this lawsuit say the planned raids are retaliatory in nature.
According to the filing, ICE allegedly detained hundreds without proper warrants, legal representation, or individual assessments, a move move the ACLU blasted as a violation of constitutional rights. While ICE officials insist the operation followed all legal standards, the case is already moving fast through the courts.
Immigrant rights activists are calling into question some of the tactics being used by federal agents, by federal officers during these enforcement operations, calling them unlawful and a denial of due process. So they want the courts to step in. They want a judge to issue an injunction to temporarily put a stop to these ICE raids, at least as they're being conducted at this very moment.
And while the arrests might be over, the aftermath is spiraling in every direction. Civil rights organizations, including the ACLU of Illinois, are already preparing legal challenges. They're calling for a full congressional inquiry into what they describe as constitutionally questionable enforcement tactics. Some claim that agents went beyond their legal scope by detaining individuals without proper warrants. Meanwhile, business at the mall hasn't recovered. Reports indicate that foot traffic at the downtown location dropped by nearly 60% within the week after the sweep. By mid-month, several stores had either closed or suspended operations, citing safety concerns and reputational fallout.
The economic fallout is clearly visible in the normally bustling immigrant communities in LA's downtown.
This area is usually packed shoulder to shoulder, but in the days since ICE began its raids, business here has basically collapsed.
Our sales are not even as how they're supposed to be.
And now, new reports suggest this wasn't a one-off. Rumors are swirling, and some local officials are quietly confirming that similar raids may be headed for other multi-use commercial hubs across Illinois, including suburban retail centers and transport terminals. So, if this mall raid was meant to send a message, it's working. But what happens next could reshape how immigration enforcement works in urban spaces. Businesses, city councils, and advocacy groups are now being forced to draw lines, cooperate, resist, or risk being caught in the crossfire. Because for thousands of families in Chicago, the fear isn't over. It's just moved down the block. If you found this story wild, it's only the beginning. More raids, more fallout, and way more secrets are coming. So hit that like button, tap subscribe, and tell us in the comments, should malls be fair game for ICE, or is this a step too far?